in my opinion, there will be thousands of IBC connected chains in the future, sharing different models of security, interacting in different ways. I don't think it's going to be a black and white solution like with everything else as well. I do think that we live in a very, very colorful world, and that it will be a mix of various infrastructure solutions that we are building right now.
Welcome to the Bare Metal Podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Bare Metal Podcast. This is Martin from Rockaway X Labs. I'm here with Claimens from CryptoCrew. Hello Claimens.
Hi guys, hi Martin, how you doing?
So this is the Bare Metal Podcast. So first our obligatory question, who's CryptoCrew, what's your setup, and where are you guys hosted? How do you do things?
We're CryptoCrew. We're an infrastructure provider in the interchain since almost 2 years now. We started our company shortly after IBC was enabled on the Cosmos Hub with the genesis of Osmosis. And today we're servicing over 30 chains on our infrastructure, most of them which we validate. We run really many relayers between those chains, IBC relayers. That's one of our main focuses. And our company, as well as our offices, they're located in the south of Austria. We're actually working together in a shared office. So we physically share one room, which it wasn't really a guideline of our company, but we're from the same region, everybody, and we just got working together. And it's really, really cool. It's the room I'm sitting right now. I can show you around a little bit. So yeah, it was our shared flat. There's cool. Our servers that we're testing, so maybe you can see them here. We're a small team of 7 people. 3 of them are in the tech department, and we run powerful infrastructure. That's our focus. Our mission is to propel the interchain by providing infrastructure that reduces friction in usability and promotes scalability of the IBC network. So we're running bare metal nodes. Those are our main blockchain nodes. They're located in partnering data centers. We have 6 data center partners in Europe at the moment. So all the regions are located in Europe, and it's 12 different regions. The nodes that we run are partly rental servers and partly co-location deployments, hardware that we actually own. And speaking about the validator architecture, we use remote signer software. Shout out to Strangelove Ventures, who created Horcrux. It's a multi-party computing threshold signer, and using this software, we're able to split our Tendermint validator key into shards, and using the threshold of these shards in decentralized nodes, Horcrux Signer cluster, you call that, we provide our signatures. So that essentially enables us to run nodes wherever we want. We can really spin up a node really, really fast within some minutes using our pipeline in a new data center. And this is really one of the major topics I feel that are important for decentralized infrastructure, provided that they are really reliable and sturdy in terms of being able to react quickly if stuff goes down.
That sounds pretty cool. So first I want to dig into the Horcrux signer. So I've heard of people using Horcrux for one purpose, which is protecting the private key, right? So meaning if you split the key into shards, there's no key to get back, and the threshold signers can just simply keep processing, but they need to sort of do the computation together. That's one way to use this. But am I getting this right, that you guys actually have Horcrux nodes in different DCs? So you also leverage this increased uptime guarantee?
Exactly, you can leverage this also. So you can distribute, it's also recommended to distribute your Horcrux signer nodes over various regions and various data center providers. So in the case if one region or one data center provider goes offline, you're still able to provide full signatures. And in that case, you can easily detect that. You can take this node out of the cluster, and you can spin up a node in another region, just replacing the node that went offline, and you immediately have a full cluster online, so you can react really, really quick if something happens.
Have you guys noticed there are any sort of latency limitations in the DCs that are participating in the Horcrux Signer? Do you guys measure these? Do you guys have like an upper bound limit? How does that work?
For sure, that's the main reason why all our regions are located in Europe. So because for us that suffices, and using Horcrux that really suffices. You will be good with anything below like roughly 60 milliseconds or something. So within a continent, within the continent of Europe, we can usually data center providers they provide latencies below that. So for us, this really suffices. But we talked about it in the pre-run earlier. Our signature quotes are not always 100.00% on every network. And this is one of the reasons for it. It adds latency to your validator system. And for example, with really, really fast chains, like Injective or FMOS or also Kujira, it will lead to validators missing one or the other block from time to time. So that reduces our overall signature quote. And we maybe only get, like in the recent past, it got a little worse. So like at the moment, we're at only 96%. Only 96%, in our opinion, still really suffices to keep a network lively, because in Tendermint, we have a liveliness threshold of 66%. So as long as 66% of the voting power is online, the network will continue. And so theoretically, if you keep an average signature quote above 66%, the network will be live.
Continue signing blocks.
So for us, an internal, continue signing blocks. And for us, an internal value we have here is 95%. Anything above 95% is a good signature quote for a validator in terms of liveliness of a blockchain.
So this sort of comes to goes to the heart of the question of what's the best way to build these networks, right? And what I'm hearing from you is you guys are sort of balancing, let's say, security and latency requirements or uptime requirements, and you're trying to balance this out to do the best thing for the network, which is not necessarily making sure you have 100% signing time. And in my mind, this works, and each validator has to make this sort of trade-off and distinction. This works well if there are uncorrelated errors in the network, right? So you've just explained your setup, which is actually pretty sophisticated, and you guys have these multiple nodes across DC. So you can uphold this 95% with a very high probability all the time, right? Because you don't have this sort of single point of failure, which brings us to sort of like wider concerns around the validator industry, where the rage of the day now are white label validators, right? Where the problem here is if they go online for a correlated problem across all of the nodes they manage, then all of that stake goes down, right? Suddenly you don't have this sort of like, I may go down, at 4 p.m. and somebody else, or I miss a few blocks at 4 p.m., somebody else misses a few blocks at a random time, which is not going to be 4 p.m. However, if you happen to have this correlated infrastructure because you're managing this, let's say, from one automation, then you could suddenly take down a large percentage of the stake of the network, right? That's when the calculus of this uptime starts to be really dangerous, because you could take down a big chunk of the network instead of taking down like only your voting power for your validator. So what's your take on this white labeling situation that's unfolding in Cosmos? You're absolutely correct here, and I think that most of the viewers of the podcast, they have recently seen the All Nodes drama that was started on Twitter, or All Nodes drama. It's a cynical word for it, because it's really it is an issue, and it has been discovered by Notional, by Jacob, who are Notional. They are for sure one of those crews that are looking out really for security issues within the wider interchain network, and they discovered that the white label provider called All Nodes, who provides white label services for over 40% voting power in total on the Terra Classic network. They have had horrible security best practices. So a white label provider, if he really wants to run the nodes and wants to provide signatures for his customers, he must have the Tendermint private validator key in an unencrypted form. So
The consensus key, exactly. Like speaking of Horcrux, you could imagine some architecture where the white label provider only runs the blockchain node, and maybe the customer needs to run the signature node at his office, but then again, he needs like.
But we both know that would limit the market
office and
for the white label operator. Yeah.
That limits the market for white label providers, of course. So the way how white label providers work is they own the Tendermint key to provide the signatures. But not only that, the certain white label provider we just spoke about, Allnodes, it has been discovered that they have been creating their customers' account keys to register the validator with. So they actually know the seed word combination of 40% voting power on the network. So they could also plan some governance attacks, etc. They could maybe propose some foul community spend proposal, and the block before it gets rejected, they could override with 40% voting power in one block. They just override all the votes, and they could capture lots of money. So this is, in speaking truly about it, you would need to say that this chain with a situation like that with over 40% voting power needs to be seen as compromised. So I don't think that this chain should be seen as a real blockchain infrastructure in terms of permissionlessness and everything surrounded with it. So for us, this situation, it meant that we recently renounced our support for the Terra Classic network. So we will be spinning down our validator in 12 days from now. No, in 8 days from now, on the 14th of February, because the state of the network as it is, it's unfortunately a danger to our delegators again.
Yeah, so this is obviously.
We said
I'm getting that for you guys. This is unacceptable. You can no longer lend your reputation to Terra Classic. Well, I just want to go back to this discovery. I mean, in my mind, yes, Allnodes generates the keys, which in itself the governance keys as well as the consensus keys. Like, I want to break this down a little bit later, but. The difficulty was that somebody was loudly complaining on Twitter they couldn't get their keys, right? So, at least in one case, Allnodes was the only one in possession of the governance key, and the actual validator, I'm quoting in the air now, didn't even get access to their keys, right? So this was they were saying I can't even vote because I don't have access to my governance key. Which in my mind, if it's even possible, it's like worse than sharing the keys. Like, you don't even, as a validator, you have no access to your key. I just wanted to point this out, which is so this I don't think that can get
absolutely correct.
And it's just this is rock bottom.
It's really worst.
But let's break down these risks white label validators have, right? Let's step back from the situation, and we just both agreed if a white label validator is to have any business, they need to have access to the consensus key, right? With which they can sign blocks. Otherwise, if they force the customer to run it, it's not really going to work. There's not going to be a market. The people who can run the remote really signers
one model.
can most probably also run a full node. But so there's the consensus key, and there's the governance key, right? Let's say the operator key, which allows you guys to vote.
Yeah, operator account key.
What do you think is the best case usage or best case situation where you actually do have a white label validator? If you imagine there's a white label validator active on some blockchains, what are the requirements? What are the caps you would put on this white label validator in order for yourself to feel safe? What do you think? How do you think this should work?
Solution on hand, in my opinion, is pretty easy here. So you could just create some kind of front end where you provide your white label validator customers with a feature where they could register the validator using their own Kepler wallet, for example. So we just don't have that front end. It would just need to be, somebody needs to make it, But if I would be a white label provider, that would be like a core piece of my IP that my customers can create accounts on my website where they feel safe about my services. And just a simple front end where you could log in or you could connect to with your Capital wallet and sign the create validator transaction. So the white label provider, he provides the public Tendermint key, and you connect this Tendermint key by providing your transaction signature from your Kepler wallet using a ledger, in the best case, and create the validator. And from that moment on, delegators can delegate to that validator, and if that validator receives enough delegation, it will be active. And from that moment on, the Tendermint consensus key is the only key that's responsible for providing signatures. That can, in my opinion, stay with the white label provider because they're responsible for providing the signatures and for providing the uptime. But in this scenario, the operator account key, it would always stay with the white label validator customer, and he could be in charge of his own key, and the key wouldn't be compromised because a private key that has been with another person, doesn't matter if they say they deleted it, because this white label provider, they recently came out with a statement, a public statement, and they said they deleted all their customers' keys. Yeah, they can say that, but you just cannot prove that. You can very well.
It's not possible to verify, right?
You can prove that you own a key. That's really, really easy, but the other way around is really, really hard. Actually, right. You cannot just prove that you don't own a key.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with everything you're saying. I think that would be a massive improvement over the current situation with white labeling. Me, as somebody who's concerned about monitoring also blockchain infrastructure, looking at this big picture, I would also propose that there needs to be a clear cap of how much voting power can be registered with this white label validator, right? So, in my mind, I would also, it's really hard to reach, but if a white label validator has more than, say, 10% of voting power, then they can essentially, if they make a mistake in their automation, or if they decide to stop signing blocks for whatever reason, like they've shorted the currency on some market, like they've decided to, we're just going to short, Evmos, and we're just going to stop processing blocks to try and harm the network to create FUD. Like in my mind, that's also a way to attack the network. So I would add to that there should also be some sort of clear limitation on the amount of voting power one specific white label validator can have, right? Because it's a correlated risk. They can still dump those consensus keys and stop signing blocks, right? Or they can remove access to them. Would you agree with sort of this idea of the cap?
For sure, and even take it a step further and would say, why not enforce maximum delegation or voting power limit for every validator on the network? We would have better decentralized networks, but that reduces validator competition, and that it messes with the validator market. And until now, it's been decided by the bigger part of the community that we don't want that. Same thing with social slashing also. In my opinion, I was really surprised that the Prop 16 story on Juno really took the path it took, because I instantly, in the beginning, I thought, this is going to go rejected by everybody.
Could you explain what that Prop 16 is for these guys who are listening?
Oh, it's been over a year now, has it? Yeah. So Prop 16 was on Juno Network. Juno Network launched with an airdrop to Osmosis and Atom holders, and there was a whale cap that was enforced in the Genesis, and it said that Juno was only airdropped to Atom holders, and the whale cap was 50,000 Atom per wallet, and so there was this entity who coincidentally had, 30 wallets with 49,999 Atom tokens, and he maxed out the Juno airdrop, which would be no problem in my opinion. If that's 30 entities, but in my opinion also not if that's an entity owning 30 wallets, because in that situation he just got lucky because they designed the airdrop the way they did, and he received the full amount. And what he did was he consolidated the funds on the Juno side of things, and he just created one wallet, and he consolidated the whole airdrop from over 30 wallets into one whale wallet, and
which doxed it as one entity, right?
Which doxed him as one entity, and from that moment on, he became well known throughout crypto Twitter as the Juno whale. Takumi Asano, a hedge fund manager from Japan. So they socially slashed him. They put on Prop 16. It was a governance proposal where the community said that essentially this entity, because he doxed himself to be one entity, he received the airdrop in the wrong way, and he was able to game the airdrop. And there was a huge discussion. The Prop 16, I think it even got declined, so it didn't pass. And there was another proposal and then another one. And finally, the community, like after a long political discourse, the community decided to remove those funds from the wallet of the whale, of the Juno whale, and transfer it to a smart contract where he has rights to withdraw it from. But he does need to ask, and there is a certain withdraw time delay in which the community can react and say, we don't want the whale to withdraw that much of his funds. So it does give the community back an instrument of control over those funds. But yeah, essentially that was the first time, at least I know of, where a blockchain community enforced social slashing on an entity. And I don't think this is law of the mob in my opinion. You can't do it. We're a blockchain community. You can't change state because you think somebody got more than he deserved.
I understand. Yeah. Okay. So I didn't know about all of this background. I think I'm pretty new here. So this happened either close to or right. when I started.
That was like the biggest drama exactly a year ago in the Cosmos. Like
okay. So
I think it was still one of the hot topics last year at the Gateway conference in Prague.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. So that's an interesting one. So this is in effect social slashing. I guess the intent of this is to avoid dumping too many tokens on the market at the same time. But the way they're doing it is they're restricting the access to those tokens for the hedge fund manager retrospectively, exactly. Right? They later said, "Oh, I didn't like how that airdrop worked, and then we need to do something." Okay,
exactly. So for me, this situation is really similar to some white label providers you try to remove from the network, because now we know, okay, there's all nodes, but it's not only all nodes. There are other white label providers, and there are many white label validators, customers of those white label providers that we don't know of are really white label validators. So how would you confirm a validator to be a white label validator? That's the first problem. And the second problem is what would you do with them? I think like on Mars Protocol is a really cool blockchain that recently launched in the Cosmos ecosystem. Today in the forum there appeared a post about socially, or not socially slashing, I have to say. It's a signal proposal that says that white label providers or providers of white label validator services on the network are unwelcome, because all nodes, they recently joined the network and they're now providing white label services for Mars Protocol. So this community is essentially like one of the first community now. It's a really new community, but they're reacting they're one of the fastest to react now. We will see that proposal on chain soon, and the community will decide if they like it or not, whether they do something, or if they even go forward with some enforcements, will be decided in the future. And I don't think that they will be able to really meet consensus on what are we doing with those white label providers and validators? How are we identifying them? I think this problem it would be better to solve it on a really lower level. And speaking about this, I have to give a shout out to the breakfast table at Cosmoverse in Medellin. Was really cool experience with all you guys. Dogmas from Osmosis, he proposed the following. He proposed to split up block proposer rewards and governor rewards. And I think this could really solve this situation. And this could be a beautiful solution for everything. Because in this scenario, validators, infrastructure providers, maybe like our company, were really focused on providing secure and sturdy infrastructure. We don't maybe engage that much with governance compared to a guy that has 10,000 followers on Twitter and does regular podcasts or something. So our focus is really not socially with the network. Our focus is more of a technical nature. So we would like to produce blocks maybe and not be such a big part of governance as we have to be right now. There is another type of validator. I'm calling them like influencer validators. They are socially engaged with the community and they bring value in their way for sure, and it has to be acknowledged. So at the moment, we only have staking rewards, and everybody gets rewards for staking their tokens to validators who are obliged to sign blocks and to vote on governance. What if we divert these rewards and maybe say, give governors, influencers, or the guys that are now running Whitelabel Validators, an opportunity to register their wallets as governors. And infrastructure providers like us give the opportunity to register their wallets as block producer. Then you have validators and governors, and delegators could choose, I want to delegate my voting power to this block producer, and I want to delegate my voting power to this governor. And the delegator receives a portion of rewards for both sides. Then you would essentially solve the situation in that we are right now, speaking of influencers being tempted to produce blocks and validators
as an income stream, right? I mean, it's pretty much the only way they're getting rewarded
proposal.
now. They have to run their own validator on which a foundation or somebody delegates, maybe the community even delegates. But that's the way they're actually being rewarded. So what you're proposing, like, that would solve the problem for them in the sense that they can now just be governors on behalf of the community, and then they can get delegations directly for actually, consistently and carefully engaging in governance on behalf of the community, whereas the block producers would get the delegations in support of producing blocks, of actually running the chain, running the infrastructure of the chain. So I, as a delegator, would now have two paths. One is I delegate to you guys, and then I delegate to somebody on the governor side. Would there be any link between the block producers and the influencers? Like, what sort of interaction do you think this would produce? Would there be any?
I don't think there has to be. I think it would just build a better infrastructure to build a free market. Because right now we are kind of competing with influencers, speaking about us as a validator. So we do have our community person and our social media marketing person in our company, but we're no Americans, we're not Twitter natives, and we don't have such an easy time gathering a big followership on social media. I'm really, I don't want to seem kind of jealous here, but I do feel there are other people like on Twitter. They engage. They have a really easy time engaging with the community, and
they're really
as I said before, they
right.
bring value to the chain. They're really skilled at it, and we're competing with them on the free validator market. And for us, this is not a good thing, because maybe in the extreme case, the influencer doesn't know anything about running nodes, uses a white label provider, and gets huge voting power because he just gathers traction on social media, and he has a easy time doing that. And maybe other companies like us that are not that active on Twitter, they will have a hard time gathering the same kind of voting power. And yeah, I think diverting this block producer reward and the governor reward, it's, by the way, it's not my idea. It was, like I said before, it was Dogmas at Cosmoverse who told us that idea. But I think it can be a really, really beautiful solution to build a more competitive market for entities that are participating in bringing a blockchain forward, producing blocks, or going into governance full on, because I do feel the governance burnout. I think everybody does, especially validators. We have almost a full-time employed person just for governance at the moment, and I don't think this is really necessary.
That's really. I'm still processing this insight that essentially block producers and influencers are competing, but coincidentally they have to participate in the same, let's call it, market. right? So the way I see delegated proof of stake is it's a market to solve blockchain security. It's a market where you have these block producers and validators that are having both roles, and then delegators choose those validators, right? So it's a market. There's a service offered, and there are people who sort of like, let's say, investing. They're joining their future with the validator by doing a delegation, right? So they connect their fates. Like if you're slashed, I'm slashed. So I'm being honest. But if you actually were to separate this, then this sort of artificial competition between influencers and block producers would just not be there. There would be an incentive. So it's a really interesting construction. Now that you have made it clear, that's something definitely worth considering. So what else do you think are
I think so too.
really important topics in terms of like the Cosmos ecosystem? What do you think? What's the future of sovereign chains? Do you think there'll be hundreds of app chains? Do you think they'll replicated security is going to be the game, or like the next ICS2, the next version? Is Dimension going to capture a large part of the share? What's going to happen?
I don't think there is one answer to this question. I do think we will have a very mixed and very diverse ecosystem of different technologies, different security intersections, different products, and I'm totally an interchain maxi, you have to say. So I'm totally of the opinion that the app chain thesis is something really unique, and I do think that interchain security kind of breaks a lot of concepts that are connected to the app chain thesis. So interchain security diverts the value accrual upstream. So consumer chains share a fraction of their inflation with the provider chain. And so you will have a totally different economic model around your token. But those are all, this is just infrastructure. We're still just building infrastructure. And in my opinion, there will be thousands of IBC connected chains in the future, sharing different models of security, interacting in different ways with each other through transfer channels, through interchain accounts, through everything that's being built right now. And it's not only IBC, it's also Celestia and other modular systems that are coming now up to the market. And I think it will be a combination of all those systems that is building a really, really diverse and big IBC ecosystem of the future.
So let's focus on this like interconnection part, right? I mean, you guys, it's also on your website, you're big in IBC. I have a lot of experience running relayers. What's your take on like the security of the whole ecosystem around IBC relaying from chain A to chain B and having lots of these interconnections, right? And let's not just look at the source code, right? Let's think about upgrades. Let's think about can you lose an ownership? Can you somehow DOS IBCs? Like what's your take on this, and what needs to happen to make the infrastructure to ensure the infrastructure for those thousands of chains in the future?
So IBC is, in my opinion, I wouldn't say I'm an IBC maxi if I wouldn't think IBC's design was perfect in terms of having the best of liveliness, security, and everything. IBC has asynchronous execution, so it's not atomic. You cannot do an action on one chain and in the same block with the same transaction do actions on many other chains. So you have this asynchronous execution. You have to say, I want to go from chain A to chain B. Then your IBC transfer message has to be confirmed on chain A. Then the relayer comes, executes all the IBC messages in between, and then after everything is finalized, you are able to access your coins on chain B and do whatever you want. So this asynchronous execution and checking all the finalization states in between, this is very much how IBC is designed. And it's the perfect layer to reduce complexity of infrastructure, of consensus algorithms, etc., and build applications on top. So the applications, they just need to speak IBC language. They just need to know, hey, IBC can do that, IBC can do this. And with this, you can build a perfect application on top of IBC, and everything that's happening below the IBC layer, blockchain consensus, interconnected networks, validators, endpoints, endpoints, not really, but the rest, it really doesn't matter for a decentralized application. That reduces developer friction. It makes it easy to develop a decentralized app, and is really, really needed to, like, many people compare IBC to TCP/IP because it plays a similar role in the interchain that TCP/IP plays in the internet. It builds a layer and reduces complexity. And we just need to canonically decide everybody just uses IBC from this point forward, and then we're good to go, in my opinion.
Let's look at the general construction. One thing, and I'm we haven't studied IBC in detail in our lab yet. We're not focusing on that. But one thing I've noticed is when I hear, say, validators discuss IBC, one of the pain points is they have to keep wallets with enough funds on the IBC layer so they're able to send transactions to the target chain, which is something that's entirely done on behalf of the validators. And somehow, I don't understand if there are any incentives or economics around this for validators, or if it's just funded out of the delegations they have on the target chain.
IBC does have an incentivization problem as a whole, and there are various teams building different solutions for it. At the moment, it is like that. The general idea is to not let the users pay for transactions, for interchain transactions, at least not in the beginning, to promote scalability, in the initial scalability, and that's cool. But that results in relayers having to pay the transaction fees and everything else, so relaying is really not a good business model. But it's really needed to interconnect the services within the interchain. So at the moment, also a relayer doesn't have to be a validator, so anybody can relay. All you need is a wallet on one chain, a wallet on the other chain, a relayer process in between that manages everything. And then you are starting to spend funds. And you will start to relay packets between those chains, and you need to pay 3 transactions for every packet that you relay, and that costs.
Right.
At the moment, it's solved like this. So chain core teams, they want their products to be integrated in the interchain, and they go to infrastructure providers like us, and maybe we get a service agreement, or we launch a validator on the chain and receive a foundation delegation. So there are ways of incentivizing relayers at the moment.
Doesn't that remind you of the influencer situation? So if you want to be an IBC relayer, you want to get compensated, you have to run a validator.
Yeah, for sure. It's not a free market at the moment. Yeah. Exactly. It's not a free market at the moment, but there's different solutions being made. So no, it wasn't Strangelove. Yeah. ICS 27 is the IBC fee middleware. So I think it's included in the V5 or V6 of IBC, and it will be rolled out on many chains in the near future. This infrastructure essentially makes it possible to charge users with fees and to direct those fees to relayers. And I've heard FMAS will roll it out, and also I think Juno. Those are the first mainnets that I heard of that will implement IBC user transaction fees. And there can also be other ways of solving this. Like I imagine, like maybe Confio, they built a relayer software in TypeScript. So this could very easily be ported to be integrated in a web front end, and would essentially enable a user to relay his transaction himself. So maybe you withdraw your asset from Osmosis. There is no relayer available. Osmosis tells you your packet sequence. And then you go to this other front end, and you need to connect with a wallet on both chains, because, yeah, you need to pay transaction fees on both chains. But it could be easily handled by some kind of front end. And we could imagine a future where there are front ends where users relay their own transactions.
Sounds like
and
hard
I don't
UX,
think
though,
that
for
it
users.
will be black or white. Exactly, but you could automate that process. You know, you could take away much of the friction. You could reduce it to one button, probably relay, and that's it, because it already knows where you want to go by parsing your prefix, like the address prefix. Like when it says Juno, the front end, it can know that you want to go through channel 15 port transfer client. 07 Tendermint something, and everything else happens behind curtains, so the user doesn't need to know anything.
Right.
I don't think it's going to be a black and white solution like with everything else as well. I do think that we live in a very, very colorful world, and that it will be a mix of various infrastructure solutions that we are building right now.
So that's sort of like that was discussion around, let's say, incentives or fee paying and the costs of IBC relayers, right? So apart from the hardware, what do you think about the maturity of different like relayer implementations, right? So there are at least a few. There's definitely Hermes. There are a couple of more. Have you guys examined this? Are you in favor of certain clients? What do you guys use?
Definitely. So there are some teams deeply involved in building public goods around the interchain, and Strangelove is one of them. They built a relayer software in Go. It's called the Go relayer, or Really, and this is the one heavily used software, and the other one is by Informal Systems. It's built in Rust, and it's called Hermes. And general conception is that Hermes is easier to configure. I can confirm that. Maybe a little bit easier to configure because it spares you some small things that the Go relayer doesn't spare you in the config files, where the Rust relayer queries those. So, but I do think software competition is really, really important in the open source space, because only with competition comes general improvement. And those two teams competing on the relayer market with each other, it's really, really good for everybody in the interchain. And one team is making the other team build better products, and only me saying we use Hermes more maybe than really doesn't mean anything. Okay.
Yeah, sure, I understand. So these are the two, let's say, key software providers. Look, it's better than Comet, right? So at least we have two implementations, not like one implementation like the consensus. But are there any more?
Correct.
Are there any more sort of implementations that you would
I talked about the TypeScript relayer.
Yeah, so you've mentioned that
one? The TypeScript relayer I mentioned just before. Yeah, it's built by Confio, but it's not really been developed since longer. So if anybody wants to take that up and build a relayer for a browser, go for it. Get on Confio's GitHub and search for the TypeScript relayer and just continue with it, please, because I think it would be a great product, like built in TypeScript, JavaScript, implemented in the front end, like let users relay themselves.
That sounds really cool. So there are something like 3 relayer implementations that are able to speak IBC. Yeah, that's
I'm
good
aware
news for
of
the ecosystem.
currently, yeah.
Okay, so I guess another question for, around the ecosystem and growth. We've mentioned thousands of chains. In my mind, for example, the Web3 development story, the like RPCs, archive nodes and stuff is still really unsolved. We're in the business of scanning chains, crawling chains, and we've discovered lots of RPC nodes across the ecosystem, obviously, but the reliability and the uptime of these things, can I trust them, is really difficult. Like, what do you guys run RPC relayers? What's your take? What does the space need to really allow dApp developers to just go for it? I want to spin up a website and I want to talk to a reliable RPC. I don't want to be, sleuthing around and trying to understand who can provide some service.
This is something we are focusing very much right now. We're actually building a product surrounding this question, and I do think that you can see it from different points of view. So maybe let's start with the decentralized provider point of view, because that's where we are right now. Like, validators are running endpoints, they are registered somewhere behind some public domain, and they are reliable or they are not. And shout out to EchoStake, by the way, who built Restake.app. They didn't only build Restake.app, they also built Cosmos Directory, and what they built there is a load balancer that balances all the RPC endpoints and all the API endpoints that are in the chain registry on GitHub, and it scans those RPC endpoints, and if they respond, they get integrated behind a load balancer hosted by Cosmos Directory. And so going to rpc.cosmos.directory / sorry?
On a cachnet, right? So it's a Cosmos Directory is running on a cache. Is that right?
Oh yeah, it's running on a cache.
Right.
Yeah.
So the load balancer is hosted, I guess, on a cache provider, and it's balancing those RPCs.
I think they're at least. yeah, I think the front end is for sure hosted on Akash. I'm not sure about the load balancers, but it could be as well. But yeah, it's a really, really cool cool product, because you can just go there and just type rpc.cosmos.directory/network, and you will have any RPC network and a function in RPC endpoint. But then there are different problems connected to that, because you can run a node in different configurations. So you can, for example, choose to prune old state of your node and only retain, for example, the last 100 blocks. So if anybody queries state that is older than those last 100 blocks that you're retaining, your RPC doesn't have an answer. So it just says, I don't know. And maybe an RPC you're connected now, it's a so-called archive endpoint, and it has archival state until the first block, and you're querying it, and you're asking, hey, what happened in the 5th, and the 6th, and the 7th block? And then the load balancer balances you to another public RPC provider that doesn't retain those blocks, and suddenly you don't have data, and your program doesn't know what to do. And it's a very, very, very big problem. I think, to back up a little bit, I think socio-technological development happens as follows. A technology gets developed, then it gets tested, and then there is a lack of infrastructure. So imagine we built fast cars. We weren't immediately able to drive them in a fast way because we just didn't have the infrastructure. We just didn't have fast roads. And it needed a few decades for humanity to build really, really fast roads to use the full potential of the fast cars in the last decade. And for me, this is a very good analogy for general socio-technological development. So something gets developed, then it lacks in infrastructure, then the infrastructure needs to be developed, and then the next technological development can happen. And I do feel a little bit the interchain is at the moment at very much the stage of building the infrastructure. So we have Tendermint consent, we have blockchain, we have Tendermint consensus, like we have IBC protocol, we have the technology, but it lacks in good infrastructure. And this is actually why our company is focusing very much on infrastructure, because we do feel that the infrastructure needs to be scalable for the interchain to be scalable. And we are building a very much centralized front-end product, endpoint product, sorry. We're building a very much centralized endpoint product. Maybe you can compare it to Infura for the interchain, where users could just go and say, hey, I need Stargaze RPC endpoint archival state, and I need it now. I'm willing to pay for this service if it's reliable and if I can count on it. Like, I think many developers, that's what DApp developers look for, reliability and accountability of the endpoints. And I do feel this product is very much needed. It is in the proof of concept stage on our side, and it has to do with optimizing your infrastructure, of course. But at the moment, we feel really confident with this product, and I'm pretty sure it will launch within the next 6 months.
Perfect. Well, I guess those are bright days for the Cosmos ecosystem, when they'll have super fast, reliable RPCs, easy to discover, right? Easy to understand, like is their archive, what's the history. Low latency. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope we can make it happen.
Well, that's, I think, a great note on where to end today's podcast. So I want to thank you very much for coming over and having a chat.
Thank you, Martin, for the invitation. It was very, very fun.
And yeah, hope to see you here again.
Yeah, likewise. And see you for sure. Yeah, I'm promoting the other conference, but I will see you in Prague, man. We will be there for sure. And yeah, I'm gonna have another small chat with you about that.
Okay, looking forward to it. See you. Have a good one.
All right, cool. Thank you for everything. See you. Bye-bye.